Hi, I'm Tom, and you are tuned in to Hit the North, a podcast where I talk to a range of special guests, sharing their thoughts and feelings about the North, defined inclusively. In an idle moment, I've imagined like the ultimate northern supergroup with Trevor Horn producing, the Unthanks, Prefab Sprout, and Hen Ogled making the music, with Mariam Rezaei on the turntables, refracting the results strangely and joyously. Mariam Rezaei is a DJ, pianist, composer, live performer, recording artist with physical and virtual releases like Blood, Skein, and Bone. He's part of the band The Sleep of Reason produces Monsters alongside Gabrielle Metelli, Met Rasmussen, and Lucas Koenig, as well as an educator, indeed a senior lecturer in music technology and composition at Newcastle University. She was a key figure behind the old Police House arts venue in Gateshead and within the Tusk Festival milieu. Her music is experimental and can be many things, including weirdo club music. Weirdo club musics was what you just heard. Mariam is quite simply a force and a fine Geordie. This show's first. So hello, Mariam.
Hi.
Thanks for joining us today. We're here in Northumbria University. It was going to be Newcastle, but for various reasons it's Northumbria that we're hosting this today.
Nice to come across campus to the other side.
And have you lived more than 5 years of your life in the north?
Absolutely. I was born and bred in Gateshead. Was brought up in Lowfell before the Angel of the North turned up. I remember that skyline when it didn't have Anthony Gormley. Yeah, and I've lived up here for most of my life. I still do. I live in Newcastle city centre now. So I've mainly been between Gateshead and Newcastle. And I love both. You know, I feel very comfortable in both places. Just like everyone else, there's some things that can get a little bit annoying and irritating, but for the most part, the Geordies and the Northerners, they're a friendly bunch, and it is home.
Now, have you lived anywhere else? Like, is it for shorter times that you've been out of the northeast? Or?
Yeah, I mean, I studied at Leeds University when I was much younger, and I've travelled quite a lot across the world. I do travel a lot at the moment. I would say every week I'm going abroad. So it's starting to look a little bit like I'm part-time in the Northeast, but it's kind of a little bit like I just hop across the sea to another place and come back home.
And where are your sort of family roots longer term?
I mean, my family live here. My heritage is Anglo-Iranian. My dad's Iranian. My mum is English. My parents are both retired and live up here in the Northeast. Yeah, and I live here with my husband.
And what were your experiences like of the education system? And do you have any reflections on what social class meant and means to you?
This is a great question because, yes, I mean, I have many different reflections on what social class means to me and also my experiences as a mixed race young girl. You know, I was in school, you know, the very late 80s into the early 90s. And my brothers and I were the very few people of any mixed heritage or differing heritage. You know, I come from a working class background and we never went without. We always had everything that we needed. I do know that there were times that were harder than others. But like many families, wider families pooled together. And one thing that struck me, I suppose, as I got a little bit older, when I went to university, and I went to Leeds University to do my bachelor's degree, I realised I was a little bit older the first time I went to go see a live music concert. I studied the piano from a very young age. My mum and dad got me a piano when I was 5 years old.
Right.
It was a 50 quid old Joanna from a charity shop. But it was another year before I had any piano lessons. And that's because we didn't have a great deal of money. But also, I think my parents wanted to make sure I was very serious because, a 5-year-old saying, I want to play piano, I want to play piano. But I noodled on that piano for a whole year, and then obviously persuaded my parents that they should give me that opportunity and that chance. Yeah, I was a little bit older when I got to go to see my first live music concert, and the music teacher bought the ticket for me to go.
Yeah.
So I was a teenager, and I went to go see the Halle Orchestra play Newcastle City Halls, which was a fantastic thing. I got to go see them play Beethoven symphonies, and that was a absolutely life-changing moment for me to experience such magnificent music, to hear so many instruments played live at the same time, and that overwhelming cloud, that billowing sound. It was completely visceral. It was completely life-changing to hear and understand that. I'm a little sad now thinking back that it took so long for me to experience that, but at the same time, it meant so much when I had that first opportunity, and I knew going in it was a special treat, it was a special occasion. And many years later when I worked, it's known as the Glass House now, but at the Sage Gateshead at the time, I used to go on my lunch break or breaks between sessions when I was teaching there, and I would go listen to the orchestral rehearsals. And that's a very fond memory of mine. And as a musician, it's very important to me to be able to experience orchestral music live as much as possible.
When was it, you think, that you realised that you wanted to be a turntablist performer?
That's a really great question. I've always known I wanted to be a musician.
Yeah.
What I didn't know was how and what I wanted to do with it. I just knew I wanted to be in music and do something with it. So initially I thought I wanted to play other people's music. And for many years, I did. I learned the piano and I was performing and competing in piano competitions like a lot of young people do. And I got to about 14 and I realized I kind of want to write music, but I didn't have anyone around me that did. My piano teacher was playing other people's music and she just kept encouraging me to do that. And that's a very natural thing if that's what somebody teaches. At school, a friend of mine was learning to DJ and he was actually using house music and stuff. And it wasn't really what I wanted to learn to DJ, but I wanted to have a go on decks, and it was a completely different, liberating experience working with music, the same passion and love of music, but utilizing it in a different way. So I would say from 14, I realized there's something interesting, special going on here with the turntables. It was also at the same time I wanted to learn to write music. And I think those two things collided and it became, I want to write music through DJing, through turntables. I didn't exactly know that at that point. I know that when I was about 17 and I was studying A-levels, I had a conversation with a music teacher who was Dr. Brendan Rennick. That was through Gateshead Council. And he said to me, okay, I don't know how you write for turntables. And to be fair, even, where I am now with my experience, I know very few people who could answer that question. But he said to me, why don't you give it a go? Why don't you have a look at graphic scores? Why don't you have a think about what might the gestures be? What might it look like? And how would you communicate what you want to do? And that was a pivotal moment for me, to have somebody believe in me and to listen to me, but also not to undermine me.
Yeah, I think we're going to talk about Fractured in a bit, but I think just how eclectic that album is, you cannot pin it down, even think about pinning it down to one genre. And I think that's great, really. It's great to have albums like that aren't easily pigeonholed. You do have some classical coming through, and you certainly have ambient coming through in it with Animosity right at the end, isn't it, that one?
Yeah.
My next question was, what is your favourite album by a Northern musical artist, defining Northern in any way that you want?
So There are many different albums by lots of different Northern artists that are important to me and that have been important for me to hear as I've developed as a musician and grown older. What I would say is that a pivotal musician for me to have met in the Northeast is actually a Welsh musician, Rhodri Davies, the harpist.
Harp player. He's superb, isn't he?
He's absolutely incredible.
It's all amplified.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
His album Wounded Response is just so sublime, so beautiful. I've seen it performed live many times. Rhodri was very much a mentor for me in my early to mid-20s. We were close when he lived up here. He lived in Gateshead. At one point, we lived one street away from each other, his family and myself and my family. And this music, for me, reminds me of a really happy time and a great time in Gateshead and a flourishing DIY scene, a scene that I was very happy to be a part of, but also a scene that I know was being connected by actually an outsider coming in to the Northeast, Rhodri Davies, connecting Newcastle and Gateshead and Durham and Sunderland and sort of the wider Teesside area and bringing people together. Yeah. Rhodri left Newcastle several years ago and moved back to Wales with his family, and he's definitely very sorely missed here.
I think that brings us to another question that I had, as I've read your journal article with A. Denton about the old police house, which of course what was in Gateshead, and it gives a very thorough, interesting account of the history of this building that was one of quite a few local authority-owned buildings that were all sold by Gateshead Council for about 500k in August 2017, wasn't it?
Yeah.
But you were involved, I think, from 2011 to 2017 in making it a wonderfully experimental space. Could you say anything about that project for those 6 years and how you reflect on it now?
Well, the Old Police House project is very close to my heart, and to my colleagues Adam Denton and also Mark Wardlaw and Jamie Stewart Rest, Will Edmonds. I initially got hold of the Old Police House building through a project called Northernness, which was a project where I worked with a number of young people and an instrumental ensemble. The Northernness project was a commissioned piece to do with the Cultural Olympiad, and I ran a number of workshops and then wrote a piece of music, which we then performed with these young people. The Old Police House was the rehearsal space that we used at the time for us to be able to workshop and rehearse together. So that's how I got a hold of the Old Police House and was a tenant there. This space was essential very specifically for this first project of Northernness, but also for the legacy of that group of young people. And it was a really wonderful and very mixed bunch of young people. There were some young families, young parents in there. There were some younger people who were in their late teens that were looking to connect and make new friends. There were some young people who were already DJing and wanted to learn a little bit more about turntablism. The building was then used as a safe space for people to come and rehearse and practice. And then those young people had ideas about putting on small community events and things like that. It developed a little bit further into also helping co-promote, again, all community events. So at the time, I think this is about 2014, the Morden Tower in Newcastle was closed down. And there were a couple of local promoters who needed a small space for a very friendly audience to come along and just bear witness to some fantastic performances. And they asked if we'd give a little donation, those kind of donations went to the artists that were playing, basically. There's no money being made. There's no money to be made. So we were able to, in a room the size of a medium kind of sitting room space, we were able to put a couple of artists on to play to a humble and small audience, modest in size.
It was reclaiming a building where some pretty dubious things had happened, like the article reveals. I hadn't actually heard of the Little Towers killing at all, and that was 1976, and he was beaten up in those very cells, wasn't he?
That's from what we understand. That's what happened, and any building that's called a police house is inevitably going to have been involved with the business of the police, you know. That's a sad story to have learned about Little Towers and what happened. The Angelic Upstarts wrote a track.
Yeah, I think the Jam and the Tom Robinson band did as well. So there's actually...
You know, it doesn't surprise me. I didn't know that, but yeah.
3 really key artists in that era.
And, you know, the other thing about the old police house is that it was used at some point by the police brass bands. And I understand that a police officer gave a key. The building wasn't being used, and the police had moved on to a different building for their everyday work. And it was used for rehearsal space for you know, police brass bands, and then other stuff happened around in that area. It's an interesting history about how the buildings in that space have been utilised over the years as the police and the fire station and library, civic centre all moved up the street in Gateshead.
So how would you describe the vision for like reclaiming it and making it a very different kind of space in the 2010s?
The police house was reacting to what was needed. I mean, we didn't go in saying we will reclaim a space. We needed a space and we needed to do something, and it became what it became through the needs of our community and ourselves. So it was repurposed in that way with intention for great things to happen. And I feel like that is an honest answer to how to reclaim a space. It was through necessity.
Yeah. What is it like combining being an academic at Newcastle University with being a live musical performer and recording artist?
This is a great question, because being an academic is a full-time job. It's a full-time position, and you have to be fully invested in your area of research. And I am 1,000,000,000% invested in being an artist, being a performer. And in order to really succeed in teaching, what it is I do, I really need to do what it is I do regularly. Yeah. So it's a really bumpy collision course every week. And in one, you know, on one hand, it's fantastic. On the other hand, it's overwhelming, and it's a lot. Yeah. I think, you know, it's worth noting post-pandemic how the world has shifted and changed, especially with a lot of travel, especially talking about the music industry and what it works, you know, how it works economically, and putting into perspective how difficult things are now in the UK in comparison to other countries. Yeah. It has shifted. It has shifted, and it's becoming harder and harder and harder. It is not viable, in my opinion, to make a career as an artist in the UK very easily, unless you come from and have privilege and a cushion. Yeah. Having to work and teach every week is a step towards privilege, but I still have to work in order to put the bread on the table. So I don't have the bank of mum and dad. I don't have a cushion to fall back on unless I find one and make it. So it's not easy, but I'm fully invested, and I'll give it my absolute best until I physically can't.
And do you think that climate is so bad because of the sort of building up catastrophes of austerity firstly, and then Brexit, and then COVID, obviously? Like, is it those three is the key?
Absolutely. It's just like collision after collision after collision. And there's also a lack of consideration for the complexity of what it really takes and what's needed in terms of support for an artist to survive, not thrive, survive, because survival, it's very difficult. It's very difficult to sustain. And I believe and understand what it takes to be able to continue and to have a legacy, to have something continue in the long term, is more and more and more and more work. And that's really hard to be able to balance when you're making work and producing work for a year or 2 years in advance. I don't know many people who have to work that hard and then have to go and shift your frame of mind very quickly to lock into this other persona and this perspective of this is how I teach, or this is what I'm going to do. It's really multifaceted and complicated.
Does music in 2025 have too many cultural gatekeepers or too few? What do you think the situation's about right?
There's no such thing as right. There's no such thing as right. I mean, Gatekeeping is I'm certainly not an expert on this, and this is it's quite an unusual question.
It's often asked more regarding like broadcasting and media, well, press and TV, isn't it? Usually gatekeepers, who's controlling the information a lot of the time. I suppose music, it would be, somebody like John Peel would have been a significant gatekeeper in terms of indie music 25 years ago, wouldn't he? So I suppose it's figures like DJs and promoters, I suppose, are the key people, aren't there?
Yeah, I mean, if somebody does or doesn't like your music and they have a position of power within the media, for example, like you've mentioned, it can have a negative effect. However, if you're aiming for just one particular outlet, I think you are going to struggle, because it's important for a number of different people to hear and appreciate your music. I think perhaps one way to reconsider this question from another perspective is about what do we deem as success, on what makes you successful today as a musician, and are you being supported in doing that? And if not, who isn't supporting you? So gatekeeping, audiences seem to have, there's been a shift, I think, in some tastes by audiences in the last couple of years. Not all, but there is a majority who are particularly keen on music that is perhaps pretty, or that has a particular aesthetic, music that is in fashion, an instrument that's used in a particular way, or, for example, we kind of mentioned before, genre, music that fits within a particular genre. Anything that goes against that grain, that challenges the guard, that's actually avant-garde, is going to cause ruction. It's going to have an impact. So what I would say is, I am definitely Marmite. And I know there are a lot of gatekeepers or people who could help to change that, who are not interested in doing that, whether that comes from managers of major radio stations to DJs in clubs. But the audiences come out. I have many invitations to go perform. So what I deem as successful and gatekeeping and those barriers, they're always going to be a tricky balancing act, I think.
And was your experience with BBC Radio 3, you had quite a lot of music on there, was that a good experience?
I mean, it's always nice to be supported and to have your music played on the radio. I've been commissioned previously by the BBC. It's always gone quite well. Yeah, I mean, I get played on national radio in many other countries also, whether that be in a solo context or the orchestral context, where I've performed with the orchestras and things before. But I'm not looking to be on Six Music or on Radio 1. I mean, that's one way of having some form of success. But then, of course, the next question is, if your music's being played 1 million times on Spotify, are you actually a successful musician? Because does your bank account reflect that?
Yeah, it's the labels like it, don't they? And Spotify like it. But
well, it's because they make the money.
Only the top artists who are making much from it at all, isn't it? It's very unfair.
Yeah,
how it's set up from what I'm aware of. To move on to some of your more specific music, I loved listening to your Wolf's Tale piece, a 25-minute Bandcamp release during the pandemic in summer 2021. So, like, why did you decide to creatively use samples of the voices of the Conservative Prime Minister for far too long, Margaret Thatcher, and the then SNP MP, Myri Black?
So this piece was performed at Huddersfield Contemporary Music Festival. It was a commission, and it was pre-Brexit. So pre-Brexit, I was fortunate that I was still, I was traveling, and I was being asked by quite a lot of my friends and colleagues abroad, particularly in Europe, how's it going with the old Brexit? Do you think it's going to happen? I have to say that just a few weeks ago, I was in Germany and in an airport, and the security guard was taking the mick because Brexit is a never-ending joke. It has never stopped being the butt of the joke for the UK, especially when it comes to travel. Why did I use Maggie Thatcher? Why did he use Myri Black? Well, I was performing in Huddersfield in a northern city. I wanted to remind people of the damage that Thatcher did. And I was there to go, oi, listen, don't forget, this is what she did. we have better solutions. We have people like Mary Black who have better things to say, who are talking about the needs that we have as working class people, and that it's intercultural and that it's diverse. And these needs haven't been met still, but they need to be thought about and considered before we make these huge, big ruptures to the legal system and to what's happening in the UK. The piece was extremely well received at the time. So that recording you've heard was the live performance that I gave.
Oh, yeah,
you don't hear the audience, but when they heard Maggie Thatcher, it was like, ooh, and like, you know, there were several hundred people there, which was also a shock for me when I performed. When Mary Black came in, there was a lot of cheering. There was a lot of appreciation and understanding of how the north of England has been impacted by bad decisions politically. So for me, it was my way of saying, hey, don't forget, have a think. I remember. Do you remember? If you don't remember, think about, can you begin to consider?
I have only one thing to say.
1 in 5 children in my constituency go to bed hungry at night.
Only one thing to say.
Our unemployment level is higher than that of the UK average.
Only one thing to say.
We've watched our town centres deteriorate. We've watched our communities We've watched our communities decline.
I have only one thing to say.
Wood banks play an important role.
Thing to say. I have only one thing to say. You turn if you want. I have only one thing to say. I have only one. I have only
banks play an important role in local welfare provision.
I have only one thing
Wood banks
to say.
play an important
I have only
role
one thing
in
to say.
local
To those waiting with
1 in
bated
5
I have
children
only
in my constituency.
I have only one thing to say.
It seems to be that like the mid-80s through to the early 90s, Scotland and the north of England did probably feel very close. I mean, Scotland, poll tax was trialled out on them first, I think, wasn't it, in Scotland? So they were used as like a guinea pig in this disgraceful anti-equality change of the taxation system. Yeah, so I think it was a great piece.
Thank you.
What are your political views, and do you feel they come through in your work?
So my political views are that I am pro-peace. I am very much, I dress like a punk, but I'm a hippie at heart in many respects. I have a utopian vision of how things can and could be, but I also am steeped in reality. And I say this to my friends quite often. I am seeing the world in different countries regularly. And I'm shocked by what we're seeing in the news. I'm shocked by the large, open embracing of the far right, to see the demonstrations of the far right, and to see that not just in the UK, but to see it across Europe, and to feel that across Europe, which I am as I'm traveling.
Yeah.
It's upsetting. It's also not surprising. But what is good to know is that we have comrades and we have friends and colleagues abroad who stand for peace, who are lefty, and who want to see and believe that there will be a better way for us to all work and coexist together. So whilst we do have these issues with the far right, there are people like myself and, like I said, my friends and colleagues who are out there actively having conversations and trying to find a way that we can bring in peace and bring about change. I have Anglo-Iranian heritage, so I also have an understanding of the Middle East and the politics of the Middle East. And I have family who have been lost to war, who've been lost to brutality, and family who suffer as a consequence of decades of that. So I understand the complexities, but I do know that there is a way for peace. It is possible. And I do know that whilst it feels utopian, to say as a statement, sitting at a table and having a conversation is feasible, that we are able to do things peacefully and we are able to find a more peaceful and beneficial, fruitful resolution for everybody. My politics are removed from religion. I am not a religious person, having come from a Muslim background and had a Roman Catholic education. So I made my decisions early on, and I am very much a feminist, an inclusive feminist. It's extremely important to me. It always has been, and it always will be. And as someone is mixed heritage, it's intersectional. Intersectionality is extremely important. There are no two situations the same, and we have to understand the human within. So I hope that explains a little bit about who I am and my politics.
That's a very eloquent answer. How should we best combat the emergent new fascism today that's sort of spearheaded by the US, really, isn't it? I suppose Brazil under Bolsonaro as well, but he was voted out.
I don't have an answer to the whole world, but what I do know is we need to have conversations. We do need to speak, we need to talk. And I do know that reasoning can be found. I believe in that, I really do. And I will always continue to endeavour to pursue that. The way that I deal with politics through my music making is through the use of samples. There are times where I've sampled difficult statements or difficult bits of speech. I always have a moral and aesthetic conversation and discussion around whether it's the correct thing to do and how to reframe something, if in fact it can or should be reframed. So that is a huge part of the way that I work. But I am very sensitive and culturally understand the significance of musics. And I hope that through my music making, I'm able to find a new perspective to express what it is that my sentiments are.
I also really liked the varied musical tones on your newest album, which was out the 27th of June this year, Fractured. One of many highlights is the wonderfully titled Vengabussed, which isn't the avant bubblegum it might evoke at first thought, but electronica with wistful and beautiful arpeggios. What did you intend its title to mean, or is it surrealist?
It's not really surrealist. It is actually the Venga Boys. It is the melody of the Vengabussed, just completely reconfigured.
Oh, right.
Yeah. So it's really explicitly there in the title. However, I am using some techniques with the turntables. I have a technique called needle weaving, and this involves playing a long sample. And then whilst I'm playing a sample, I'll catch a few notes or a couple of bars of the music in a loop. I'll then play with that. I will catch the music or a few bars into a loop. I will then release that loop and the music will continue to play forwards. So the Vengabussed track is essentially the melody of the Vengabussed being played forwards, caught in loops, with the addition of a delay pedal being played. So you can hear notes being reflected back and repeated back and then fading out. It's not as clever as you hoped.
It's brilliantly done.
Thank you.
Website, you highlight that Fractured melts down punk, breakcore, electroacoustic music, Eurodance, avant rock, grime, hip hop, and free noise. Why is it so important to torch the boundaries between different genres of music?
Genre is kind of like a symptom of turntablism. And it's kind of, for me, the idea of genres are very capitalist, and they have on one hand been proscribed onto music as a way to sell it and to shift units. And what has happened over a number of decades is that certain kinds of music making or certain styles of productions, certain ways of performing live have sort of been eschewed, and certain performers get put into these particular boxes. Well, the thing with turntablism is it can be anything you want it to be, because it really is about the choice of record that you're working with and the decision that you make when you work with that material. So to have taken some drums and then to loop them small, for example, to hear the amen break having come from jazz, for example, that is a perfect example of seeing one particular genre being used in one particular way to then form what is now known as another or a different genre. But we actually know the root of that music is jazz, and it's come from jazz. But we also know that the root of that music comes from rhythm and blues, and the roots of that music come from Afro-diasporic heritage. So it's kind of like I'm trying to unravel this woven lineage of music and say, hey, it is anything you want it to be, and I've decided it's kind of this today.
How do you see the relations between popularity, nostalgia, and experimentation in this time of chaos?
There's very little experimentation in this time of chaos. So many people are playing it safe. It's actually insulting. And I think it's rude, especially if you're going to call yourself new, experimental, or improvisatory. If you're not trying, if you're not genuinely pushing in a way to find something new, I don't see why, or I just don't think you should be calling yourself that.
Like, where are people trying to do something as new as like Troutmass Replica was in 1969 or whatever it was, with Captain Beefheart and his Magic Band? It's like an incredible record. There's nothing else like that. It certainly hadn't been before.
The music industry today is absolutely hinged on popularity. I mean, the need for artists to use social media is unbelievable. There are certain generations of musicians, often musicians who are, I would say, in their 50s or 60s, and they don't have to use social media. They already did the work. They have the reputation.
Yeah.
And also it's been sewn into the audiences. It's been sewn into the music industry. And there are certain musicians where it doesn't matter whether it's good, bad, if it's a repress, if it's ancient, if it's, we had a really great example with Andre 3000 recently. Certain artists can just release something and people will follow. End of.
That sort of piano one that you had, and there was also the flute one was like a really epic album, but then there was a really short one, wasn't there, recently?
Yeah, that was the piano was pretty short.
Years ago, I think.
But new artists and younger artists now, because you're not necessarily young if you're new. You can also be, a bit older, and as in you don't have to be a teenager to be a new artist. There is a myth, I think, that's perpetuated, which is you have to do well. You have to do well on social media. You have to post. And how else are people going to know about you? The music industry is being driven into being run by the media. And that also includes PR. So a lot of artists will not get coverage or will not be supported if they haven't paid a lot of money to have a PR person. And that actually comes down to editors of magazines or editors and producers of radio shows, etc., which is a form of gatekeeping, which we mentioned a little bit earlier. Yeah. But, we also have those particular forms of media, they're being judged and based on statistics of how many people are listening. So we have this homogenization, this dumbing down, this oversimplification. And as a result, we do have a lot of musicians who are making apparently new music. And a lot of it, it's not great.
Yeah, just slight variations of what's already been before.
I think so, on one hand, pastiche, but on the other hand, to really understand the experimentation, to really truly be avant-garde, you do have to embrace that you will inevitably fail. And I say like air quotes fail, because you have to make mistakes or try something different and hard. And it is really fucking hard to do that in front of an audience. It is excruciating to do that in front of an audience. It is so hard to do that and to release that, because everyone in this industry is putting themselves forward completely exposed and asking people, hey, can you come and judge me, please? Can you come and tell me that I'm something, in the hope that it's excellent and brilliant and great. So it's really, really, really hard. And I don't in any way want to diminish that, because I get it. I know I do it. But I take a lot of crap. And I really do experiment. And I do that live sometimes. Not sometimes, every time I'm playing, I'm doing something new and I'm doing something that isn't easy. But yeah, I know that my music is Marmite. I'm much happier making Marmite sandwich music than I am being fucking beige like peanut butter. You know if you like me or you don't. And that, for me, is the sign of a good artist. You don't have to like them, but they're still very good at what they do.
Yeah, and completely distinctive.
I think so.
Yeah.
I hope so.
Another track on Fractured is entitled Commercially Viable Bullshit. But would you ever personally consider trying to create a pop hit song that crossed over into the mainstream? Or say, would you ever allow your music to be used in a commercial advert?
I would love to know who would use my music in a commercial advert. I would love to meet them. I mean, I would never say never to anything, because I really do think you have to try things once to work out if you like it or not. But I would really like to know why. And obviously I would need to make sure it was ethical and above board.
Yeah.
So I'm not going to be very happy having my music used for something that's very hateful, you know? So that I'm very clear on, from the get-go. Yeah, you just don't know the collaborations that may happen in your life. But at the moment, commercially viable bullshit is not something I wish to make. Hence the title of my own track.
Would you consider doing soundtrack work, like film soundtrack?
Yeah, I mean, I've done experimental film soundtrack work before.
Oh, yeah.
And I have performed live film soundtracks before. Again, all avant-garde in approach. But also the films in general are avant-garde.
Yeah.
So yeah, I would consider. But I do also have to think a little bit about how the music becomes cross-disciplinary and it doesn't have full autonomy, you know? So when you start working in tandem with another art form, there really has to be a good balance. And for me, there has to be an integral connection with intention to see the art forms work together.
And where do you see music headed in the future? Do you have any predictions, or good or bad?
Yeah, I mean, pop is eating itself for like the third or fourth iteration now or something. It's hilarious. I was at the hairdressers recently and they were playing a playlist, and it was a playlist of noughties music plus music today that's sampling noughties music. And I was laughing with my hairdresser because she was just like, isn't this just, daft? Like this is, and it was just incredible to hear how playlists are being put together. It is this sort of wrapped up blanket of nostalgia with a new generation thinking, oh my God, this is amazing. Because we're kind of hearing music from 20 years ago, like we heard music 50 years ago being used in music 20 years ago.
Yeah.
I mean, there has to be something new that happens. There has to be a change, but I think there's going to be a crash before that there is something new that comes through. And whoever it is, or the people that come through with the new music, I expect they will take a lot of crap, because I think that that's what we know from history. Like the greatest artists are not appreciated in their time. They're often appreciated posthumously. You got to be dead before you become a living legend, so to speak.
Yeah,
that's something we see across all the genres and all the different instruments. It's the saddest truth. It's the saddest truth. And it goes back hundreds of years as well. It's not a recent phenomena by any means. So we might actually be kind of seeing the biggest change of music in our time now, but it's not appreciated yet. We need time to pass for us to actually know. That we know from history.
feelings about AI and music? Is it a useful, innovative aid, or is it the ultimate stale regurgitation?
Well, if you're going to make music that is a regurgitation, I'd be really worried about AI. But since I don't make music that is a regurgitation of other things, I'm not so worried. AI has been used for quite a while now to make new music of some form, whether it's like helping harmonize, making some beats. It's all formulaic. It's part of the reason we're in this weird homogenized pop music industry at the moment, right? It's one of the reasons where we are now. So I'm not worried. I'm not concerned.
There's another development from auto-tune, say, and things like that.
Yeah, but the greatest auto-tune stuff is when someone gets in there and really plays with it and the soul comes through, the soul of the musician comes through. You know, technology is interesting when the human is involved in it. Mark Fell talks about creative practice and how we shape tools into instruments through our use of them. That's perfect to explain AI. That's perfect to explain auto-tune. You know, when you think about all of the incredible music that is being made using auto-tune, and you think of the shit music that's being made with auto-tune, it's to do with intention. It's to do with the person who's using it and why they're using it.
Does being Northern mean to you?
I love being Northern. I love my accent. Being Northern means being friendly, and being Northern means having a laugh, and it means saying thanks very much when you get off the bus. Being Northern, it's a fantastic thing, and it means having an alliance with Scotland. My husband is Scottish, and it's the best banter. 6 years on, we still have it every day. You know, there's a kinship. I see being Northern as being a wonderful, beautiful, vibrant thing, and I hope it continues to be. I'm sure it will.
Do you feel like that there is a commonality between Yorkshire and the Northwest and the Northeast?
There are differences, for sure, in our accents, in our wonderful use of different breads, in our different pastries and bakery products. Like, that's the beauty of the North, is it is diverse. And then, you know, I always say, I told my friends abroad, they all know about Greggs, you know? And when you come to Newcastle Airport and you go, it's the home of Greggs. One of the best things is when you go to Yorkshire and they've got different things in the Greggs. But one of the other great things is when you come to Greggs in Newcastle and Gateshead and you can get a stotty cake. And my friends, when they come visit here in Newcastle, I'm like, you got to get a stotty, you got to have a stotty, you got to take it away. And they do. And they love that. So whilst there are beautiful differences, there are beautiful things that bring us together, and I've always thought of it like that, and I celebrate that. I tell people that.
And what do you see as the main attributes of Northern people and places?
I think I kind of already said that before about friendliness and honesty, and also politeness and manners, and that's how I know I'm home. If that makes sense. That's not a very good answer. Sorry, love.
That's great. What's the number one myth about North or Northern people that you think needs consigning to history?
Oh, absolutely. That we're stupid. And we're not. Having this accent is fantastic. It's one of the best things in the world, having a Geordie accent. And you know what? Everywhere I go, people say, yeah, I love your accent. Can you say this for me? And the thing is I'm a doctor. I'm a doctor in music. I studied classical music and electroacoustic music. I've done something and pioneered in a new way, something that hasn't been done before. That's a hard ride. Hard ride as a woman. Hard ride as a working class mixed heritage person up here. And I'm often undermined for several reasons, but, you know, give me 5 seconds of making music and that will completely change the perception of that person. I know that.
Where do you think that myth comes from, that Northerners are stupid?
But I mean, I think it comes from the media, doesn't it? It's sort of portrayed, and, you know, it's like we have these what do they call it when they cast actors? What's it called? There's a name. Typecasting.
Yeah.
I think typecasting in movies and things often has portrayed that. It's like, you know, the baddie in a Disney film is going to be a male Southern posh British accent.
Alan Rickman, say.
Yeah,
Something
for
like that,
example,
yeah.
right? So it's like these kind of things. And I think that it's sort of like, someone who's not so bright, or they're a little bit just too jolly or nice but dim, that kind of thing. Like, I think that's associated with being from the north of England. And of course, that's not true. We're wonderful, clever, intelligent, brilliant, and good-looking people.
Does the north-south divide in Britain exist?
Absolutely. Financially, economically, socially, politically, historically. Absolutely. Absolutely. Everywhere you go. I don't see how anyone could argue otherwise. It shouldn't, but it does. And I think that's very sad. It's a symptom of the problems that we have with UK politics that persist. I think it's continually portrayed by things like funding. I see it through Arts Council England. I see it through people's perceptions. I think it's really sad. We have wonderful things, and it should be being embraced, and it should be being embraced for diversity and the need for us to have that as a powerful thing as opposed to a negative thing.
And I think in a way it's a southeast issue rather than the south. I think it was like the southwest is pretty marginalised as well in lots of ways. Although it's very far from the northeast, say, there's probably some kinship with remote parts of Cornwall and Devon, say. It's the southeast where the money and the power seems to lie, really. And obviously, London is very diverse, and there's a lot of great people in London. Great place, but I'm thinking Fleet Street and Westminster as the key sites of power, aren't they, really?
Yeah, it does seem so. And to the detriment of England and to the rest of the UK. I don't know. I don't have a solution to it. I wish I did. Sorry.
And what's your favourite place in the north and why?
Do you mean like a favourite place to just visit and go hang, or do you just mean like just a favourite place? I don't know, like nostalgic.
In any sense, really, it could be that it's, for like personal reasons, or you think it's the best place culturally or whatever, really.
I'm a big fan of the Literary and Philosophical Library in Newcastle, which is close to Central Station. It's a place that I used to go to as a child and take my music exams. I used to play my piano exams there. And I've been a member for a long time. I was dating my husband. We used to meet there. He's a writer, so he would often go there. I think he was quite impressed.
Peaceful, isn't it? I've done that once or twice when I was doing my PhD.
It is, yeah.
I should have done it more, really. It's so good.
It's such a wonderful place, and it's friendly. It's really mixed, which is really lovely. And obviously a reliable space to be in, a very beautiful space like that with so much natural light is very inspiring, and for me feels very energetic for someone who's a creative. It gives you a great energy.
You can get a cup of tea for £2 or something there.
I don't think it's even £2. I think
cheaper than that. Probably,
exactly. You get a cuppa and a couple of biscuits, and you get a nice hello from somebody, and you put your head down. But the other thing is, don't forget, it's just a gorgeous library. It's just a fantastic place. I was very fortunate that I was able to have a party there for my wedding when I got married.
Wow.
And I know, and what a spectacular place to be able to do that, and to be able to be surrounded by such an inspiring space, but also to be able to celebrate, all the wonderful memories that have been transformative, to have done all those exams and to have gone there and to put my own students through exams there, and then to meet the person that I'm spending, my life with there. So it's always very fun for me there.
That's an excellent choice, I would say. It's possibly answering question 7 as well, that one, but you could come up with a different one for question 7. But question 6. So what's your least favourite place in the north and why?
I wouldn't say there's one place. There are a couple of places which I know are not very welcoming. They're not welcoming to people of non-English heritage, people who of colour, anyone who's queer, anyone who's different away from the cis norm. These spaces are transformed by people. They're not the bricks and mortar, and those places change. But those places have always existed. Those people and those attitudes. The biggest thing about that is it's sad. The sadness of knowing there's hate. And unfortunately, I know that those places keep changing, but you can sense it, you can see it, and you can see that hatefulness. So that always makes me sad.
Yeah. And what is your favourite Northern institution or organisation or public space?
Yeah, that's definitely going to be the Linfill again. I think you're going to have to use that answer twice.
Is there a number 2 behind it?
I mean,
behind it? Or?
I do love the Star and Shadow Cinema in Newcastle.
Yeah.
I love all of the people there. I love all the things that I've been able to take part in over the years. I love to go to see a film there, party and boogie, go to see a gig there. It's been a constant for me for a couple of decades now here.
It was sort of mid-2000s it opened in was it Crawhall Road, sort of Stepney?
Yeah,
Stepney
and then
Bank,
it
near the
moved.
Tanners.
Yeah, and then it moved across space. But it's the people that make the place, if that makes sense. Again,
Yeah.
not the bricks and mortar. Whilst they change space, the beautiful spirit has continued. So, yeah, the Star and Shadow are very much a family, and always nice to be part of that. And I do love to be there.
Absolutely. I would agree with that one as well. I mean, it's a lot more plushly done out, isn't it? The Warwick Street one, which was in an
Yeah.
old carpet factory. But they got a good grant for that, didn't they, I think?
Yeah, they all work hard
Yeah.
to pay things and to keep things going. So it's not just a meal ticket that they're riding.
And it has a good sort of pay what you can afford policy, doesn't it, on the door every time, which I think is really good.
Absolutely, it's essential that we have
Inclusive.
spaces. Yeah,
Yeah.
we need that for sure.
What's your favourite Northern book, graphic novel, photograph or artwork? You only have to pick one of those categories.
Well, I don't have a particular one, but what I would say is I was recently at the Baltic Art Gallery and I saw Rachel Lancaster and Laura Lancaster's dual exhibition. And I've known both Rachel and Laura for many years. They've both been to the Police House over the years and performed. We're all interconnected in the community. Both Laura and Rachel have very distinctive voices in their work. And they're also very different from each other, which doesn't surprise me at all. And it's really wonderful to see a huge space in the Baltic dedicated to their work. It's very interesting to see how they've integrated the works of two very different artists into one large space, which has a fluidity and a through line, I think, in the thinking of how those works have been curated and hung. They're really wonderful and fantastic to see. So, yeah, massive shout out to Rachel and Laura Lancaster for their really fabulous work. They've always been very inspiring artists to have here in the Northeast, and I was very proud to go see their work there. Spent a long time there recently, enjoying it.
So is that on at the moment?
It's on right
Oh,
now
right,
at the
I'll
moment.
Have to,
I
have to go and see that then, definitely.
really
yeah.
beautiful, really beautiful.
What's your favourite film or TV programme of any kind, set or shot in Northern England?
I mean, who's going to say anything other than Biker Grove? I mean, we were brought up on that again. It's
Yeah, I
just
well
like,
remember it.
it's
Yeah.
got the legacy and everyone goes, hey, Biker Grove, I can't see, man, I can't see. And it's just, you know, I mean, I'm a child of the 80s and, you know, I mean, I remember Geordie Racer as well, don't get me wrong.
Oh,
that
yeah,
was
Look and Read.
exactly.
Story. Yeah, I remember that being shown. It was wheeled in on like the TV and the VHS cassettes in my school in Sunderland. Where I grew up.
Absolutely, exactly the same for us in Gateshead. It was wheeled in. It was the best part of the week. And we loved that. However, it didn't quite stand up the same as Biker Grove.
I haven't seen it recently, so I can't really comment. But
Well, you need to go on YouTube.
do you have a favourite character in Biker Grove, would you say? Or...
No, I mean, no, I didn't have a favourite. I just remember coming home from school and being like, oh yeah, we have to watch this. But it was also this sort of cringeness of like, he got that from here. Oh my God, I'm so proud. Oh my God, this is so cheesy. Oh my God, that is so funny. You know, and it was like what we all spoke about at school, you know.
Yeah.
And yeah, seeing all the fashions and stuff looking back and how we all copied it and all wanted to have our fringes like that and the girls wearing certain tracksuits and colours and
It did sort of feel accessible because I do remember at Southmore Comprehensive that I went to in Sunderland, there was opportunity for people to potentially audition, I remember.
oh my
I
God.
mean, I was never going to be an actor, but people were up for it, and it was rooted in the Northeast, which is
Yeah.
the good thing about it there.
Oh yeah,
Yeah, the paintball one is the one that
that's the
is
famous
the most
one.
famous episode, isn't it? Particularly, but I remember reading some of the books, actually, the novelizations, and they were a good read. when I was about 10 or 11, I remember. Yeah. Please nominate one unfairly overlooked Northern person to be on this podcast's Northerner roster.
Yeah, Gwilly Edmondez. Now, Gwilly
yeah.
Edmondez, Will
I've seen him
Edmonds.
perform, I think, at a Tusk
That
festival.
sounds about right to me.
Yeah.
I feel like Will, he's the godfather of something known as wild pop. And wild pop is literally that. It's pop and it's wild. It is free. It involves improvisation, but it has all the attributes of highly refined and thoroughly embracing pop music. Will is a living legend. He has worked so hard doing so many brilliant things, and he's been a real bridge for so many amazing musicians up here, including myself. So I studied at Durham University for my postgraduate, and he was teaching at Newcastle University. And I remember he came to come and see me perform, and he said, hey, you should come to Newcastle sometime and just like jam, come and play in some workshops. So whilst I also had met Rhodri Davies, who was encouraging me to come to Gateshead in Newcastle to play sort of more DIY stuff, Will was also like, hey, come in and join with some of our music students. And that was a pivotal thing for me to be embraced, because I am from up north. And, you know, actually at Durham University, my class, I was the only Northern student in that university at the time. And I was one of a few when I joined up with the Newcastle students that were also Northern. And whilst it's not the most important thing, it's one factor that you do realize, you know, when you're certainly that age, you go, okay, I'm still the only one with this accent, you know?
Yeah.
But it also symbolizes what you've overcome in order to get to that point, you know? Why aren't there more people with my accent or that look like me in these institutions? Yeah, granted, that was 15, 20 years ago, but that does kind of ring true still to an extent. Will Edmonds is part of a brilliant band called Yeah You. Gwilly Edmondez also works with Elvin Brandhi, who is Freya Edmonds, who is Will's daughter. They are both absolutely excellent playing together. They're both incredible solo artists, but when they're together, there's an incredible magnetism, which is very rare to find, I think, through any collaboration. And it's very special when you find it, and you can see they both embrace it. They have a really interesting dynamic, which pops off on stage. The music they make together is completely visceral, completely abrasive, and extremely refined, whilst also happening in the moment. So it's a really brilliant and finely balanced combination of electronics with vocals within this framework of improvisation, which is completely feeding off the energy of what's happening in that room at that moment. So yeah, both massively under-recognized and underrated artists. But yeah, you need Gwilly Edmondez on here.
That's a great choice. Yeah, and it is partly other people who could appear as well, I think, that question. Definitely, so I'll look into that. Could you please tell me your selections of 3 songs or pieces of music which deeply express the North to you?
So Mariam was unable to give 3 specific choices on the day in the moment. So I've came up with 3 based on everything she said. And the first is Rhodri Davies. Here the sun does not enter. Very aptly. That was from Davies's album Wound Response. It was a favourite of Mariam's. And the second selection, extrapolated from this fine interview, is Gwilly Edmondez, and a brief, great extract from the track INTROSPEX, which runs to about 29, 30 minutes. It's a great epic. Here is a little extract.
You've got to believe me. You've got to believe me. The truth is gone. The truth is gone.
And Mariam did mention to me that she would have something in by the fall without question.
Oh my God. I'm going to end up saying the fall for sure.
So this is the fall with what else but the NWRA, the North will rise again.
I'm Joe Total. Are they yet unborn son? The North will rise again. The North will rise again. Not in 10,000 years. Not in 10,000 years. Too many people, cowards and criminals, and government crap.
Thanks very much, Mariam, for talking today.
Thank you.
That concludes the interview. It's been a real pleasure. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Awesome.
Thanks for doing it, Mariam.
It's all right. Thanks for asking. I just hope the answers are okay. And there's some interesting stuff. Hopefully there's some interesting stuff there for you.
It's the last one I'm recording for the first series, actually. So
Hey, cool.
That's it for this week on Hit the North. Conversations, editing, idents and stings by Tom May. Thanks to my guest, Mariam Rezaei, for talking on the 23rd of September 2025. Music was by Mariam Rezaei, including one featuring Elvin Brandhi. Sleep of Reason produces Monsters, Rhodri, Davies, Gwilly, Edmondez and The Fall. Hang on! Want to be on the podcast or suggest a guest? Email hitthenorth.ne41@proton.me. Send us your favourite northern songs, places or stories there, or in the Hit the North Facebook group, and you'll get shout-outs. If you've enjoyed this, spread the word on social media or in person, and follow at Hit the North UK at bsky.social. Don't miss the Hit the North playlist on Spotify. Hit the North, manners!